foil, floor, got it?
No.
Scooch over, slightly
Yeah, I
right,
got
silver
it.
foil, top of the stairs. Got it? Jesus Christ.
A man walked into one of the most protected events in America. The President of the United States was inside the building. Secret Service agents stood everywhere. Hundreds of powerful people sat inside a ballroom. Then suddenly, a shotgun blast echoed through the hotel. One man had crossed the security line. That man was Cole Allen. But here is the strange part. People who knew him said he was quiet, smart, calm. Some people even called him kind. So how did a man with degrees in engineering and computer science become the center of one of the biggest federal criminal cases in America? What pushed him toward violence? Did warning signs exist before the attack? And how close did America come to disaster that night? Tonight, we break down the full story of the Cole Allen case from beginning to end. You're watching True Crime Dead Signal, where every silence hides a secret, and every signal tells a story. Subscribe now for real true crime cases, disturbing mysteries, and unsolved investigations uploaded regularly. Let's begin. Before federal investigators connected his name to one of the most serious criminal cases in America, Cole Allen lived a quiet and mostly private life in California. Reports described him as intelligent, educated, and deeply interested in technology. He was not known as a celebrity, politician, or public figure. Most people who crossed paths with him saw a man focused on computers, engineering, and teaching. Friends and former classmates reportedly described him as calm and reserved. Nothing in his public image suggested that his name would later appear in national headlines connected to a violent federal investigation involving the President of the United States. Cole Allen studied engineering and computer science during his college years. According to reports, he earned a degree in mechanical engineering from the California Institute of Technology, one of the most respected science schools in America. Later, he completed a master's degree in computer science. His academic path showed strong interest in machines, software, and technical systems. People who studied with him reportedly viewed him as serious about education and focused on problem solving. During this period of his life, there were no public reports connecting him to criminal activity. His background appeared similar to many young professionals building careers in technology and education. Outside of academics, Allen reportedly spent time working as a tutor and teacher. Some reports said he helped students understand math and science subjects. Former co-workers described him as knowledgeable and patient while teaching. He also worked on independent video game projects and computer-related ideas. His online profiles reportedly presented him as someone interested in game design, software development, and creative digital work. At the time, his life looked ordinary from the outside. He was not widely discussed in the media, and there were no major controversies publicly linked to him before the events that later brought federal attention to his name. Investigators later began reviewing his online writings, digital activity, and personal communications after the Washington incident. According to reports, authorities searched for signs that could explain how his life changed direction. Some investigators examined political opinions, internet searches, written statements, and private messages connected to him. Reports claimed that Allen had expressed anger about political issues and government leadership in certain writings before the attack. Federal authorities later focused heavily on understanding whether these beliefs developed slowly over time or became stronger in the months leading up to the incident. These findings became an important part of the investigation because prosecutors wanted to establish motive and intent. One detail that drew public attention was the contrast between Allen's educational achievements and the seriousness of the allegations against him. Many people online questioned how someone with advanced technical education could become involved in such a high-profile criminal case. News coverage often focused on this contrast. Some former classmates reportedly said they were shocked after hearing his name connected to the investigation. Others questioned whether hidden warning signs may have existed earlier in his life but were never noticed. At the same time, investigators worked to separate facts from rumors while building their case. Federal agencies continued gathering digital records, travel information, and witness statements to create a full timeline of his actions. As more information became public, reports revealed that Allen had allegedly planned his trip to Washington in advance. Authorities stated that he reserved hotel accommodations before the White House Correspondents' Dinner and traveled across the country carrying weapons and tactical gear. Investigators later examined whether his preparation showed long-term planning or rapid decision-making. They also looked into whether he acted completely alone. Officials publicly stated that they had not identified a larger organized group connected to the attack, though the investigation remained active. Questions surrounding his planning, online behavior, and motivations became central topics in national discussions about political violence and public security. The background of Cole Allen became one of the most discussed parts of the case because it showed how an individual with an ordinary public image could suddenly become the focus of a federal criminal investigation. Before the attack, his life appeared centered around education, teaching, and technology. After the incident, investigators, journalists, and the public began studying every part of his history to understand what may have led to that moment. The case raised larger questions about hidden warning signs, online influence, personal isolation, and the ability of people to conceal dangerous intentions behind normal daily lives. Even as the legal process continues, many questions about Cole Allen's transformation remain unanswered. The White House Correspondents' Dinner is one of the most recognized political events in the United States. Every year, journalists, government officials, business leaders, celebrities, and media organizations gather in Washington, D.C. for the event. The dinner is organized by the White House Correspondents Association and is known for bringing together people connected to politics and national media. Presidents often attend the gathering, along with cabinet members, lawmakers, reporters, and invited guests. Because of the number of powerful people inside one location, the event operates under extremely high security. Federal agents, hotel security teams, and local law enforcement officers work together to protect the building and everyone attending. The 2026 White House Correspondents' Dinner took place at the Washington Hilton Hotel, a location that has hosted the event many times in the past. Preparations reportedly began weeks before guests arrived. Security checkpoints were installed throughout the property, and entry points were carefully monitored. Vehicles entering restricted areas faced inspection, and invited guests reportedly passed through multiple layers of security screening before entering the ballroom. Secret Service agents were stationed both inside and outside the hotel because President Donald Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance were expected to attend. The event schedule included speeches, media appearances, and formal gatherings involving some of the most influential people in the country. On the night of April 25, 2026, hundreds of guests entered the Washington Hilton while television crews recorded arrivals outside the building. Reporters conducted interviews near the entrance while photographers captured images of political leaders and celebrities walking into the event. Inside the ballroom, attendees gathered around large banquet tables while staff members prepared dinner service. The atmosphere followed the usual structure of the annual event, with speeches, conversations, and media coverage happening throughout the evening. At the same time, security officers remained positioned across hallways, entrances, elevators, and restricted areas to maintain control over movement inside the hotel. Federal investigators later stated that Cole Allen had allegedly prepared in advance for the night of the event. According to prosecutors, Allen booked accommodations at the hotel before the dinner and traveled from California to Washington, D.C. Investigators claimed he arrived carrying weapons, ammunition, and tactical equipment. Authorities later examined surveillance footage, hotel records, transportation history, and electronic communications connected to his trip. Officials focused on building a detailed timeline showing how he moved through the hotel area before the incident occurred. Investigators also reviewed how he allegedly approached secured sections of the property while the event was underway. Reports stated that shortly before the shooting, Allen allegedly moved toward a Secret Service security checkpoint near the ballroom entrance. Agents and officers were stationed nearby while guests remained inside attending the dinner program. Prosecutors later claimed Allen crossed into a restricted security area and fired a shotgun during the incident. One Secret Service agent was reportedly struck in the chest but survived because of protective body armor. Federal authorities said responding agents reacted within seconds to stop the threat before Allen could move deeper into the secured sections of the hotel. The rapid response became one of the most discussed parts of the investigation because of the number of high-ranking officials inside the building at the time. After the shooting, security teams immediately locked down parts of the hotel while law enforcement officers secured the area. Guests inside the ballroom reportedly received instructions from security personnel as federal agents worked to control movement throughout the property. Emergency responders entered the scene while investigators began collecting evidence from hallways and restricted sections near the checkpoint area. News organizations quickly interrupted programming to report breaking developments connected to the White House Correspondents' Dinner. Across the country, television networks and online media outlets began continuous coverage of the incident, focusing on the attempted breach of one of the most heavily protected political events in America. In the days following the attack, federal authorities continued examining how the security breach happened and whether additional warning signs existed before the event. Investigators reviewed surveillance systems, witness statements, digital communications, and hotel activity records connected to the suspect. Officials also analyzed the response timeline from the moment the threat emerged until Allen was taken into custody. The incident raised major questions about political violence, event security, and the difficulty of protecting large public gatherings involving government leaders. Even though federal agents stopped the attack quickly, the White House Correspondents' Dinner of 2026 became permanently linked to one of the most serious security incidents connected to a presidential event in recent American history. Federal investigators believe the attack at the White House Correspondents' Dinner was not a sudden decision made in a single moment. According to prosecutors, evidence collected after the arrest suggested that Cole Allen had allegedly prepared for the incident ahead of time. Authorities began building a timeline by examining travel records, hotel reservations, digital communications, surveillance footage, and electronic devices connected to him. Investigators focused on understanding how long the planning process lasted and what actions were taken before the night of the attack. The case quickly shifted from a shooting investigation into a larger examination of preparation, intent, and possible warning signs that may have existed before the event took place. According to federal reports, Allen allegedly booked a room at the Washington Hilton Hotel weeks before the White House Correspondents' Dinner. Investigators believe this reservation was an important detail because the hotel was the same location hosting the event attended by political leaders, journalists, and federal officials. Authorities later reviewed hotel records to determine how long he intended to stay and whether he made specific requests related to the property layout. Investigators also studied maps, entry points, and security areas connected to the hotel to understand whether Allen may have researched the location before arriving in Washington, D.C. Prosecutors reportedly viewed these details as signs of advanced preparation rather than random movement on the night of the incident. Travel records became another major focus during the investigation. Authorities stated that Allen traveled from California to Washington before the dinner took place. Reports claimed investigators reviewed transportation bookings, financial transactions, phone data, and digital location records connected to his movements across the country. Officials worked to establish where he stopped, who he contacted, and whether anyone else may have known about his plans. Federal agencies also examined whether the suspect discussed political anger or violent ideas with other individuals before arriving in Washington. As investigators pieced together the timeline, they attempted to determine whether the planning process developed over several weeks or whether it accelerated shortly before the event. Prosecutors later claimed that Allen brought multiple weapons and tactical items with him during the trip. According to federal authorities, investigators recovered a Mossberg Maverick 88 shotgun, a pistol, ammunition, knives, and additional gear after the attack. Officials examined how the weapons were transported and whether the suspect legally obtained them before traveling to Washington. Authorities also reviewed purchase histories, equipment records, and digital searches related to firearms and tactical supplies. These findings became central to the prosecution's argument that the attack involved deliberate preparation. Investigators reportedly believed the combination of weapons and equipment indicated planning focused on gaining access to a heavily protected area. Digital evidence reportedly became one of the most important parts of the investigation. Federal agencies searched through computers, online accounts, emails, internet searches, and private writings connected to Allen. Prosecutors stated that investigators found messages and documents expressing political frustration and anger toward government leaders. Some reports claimed authorities discovered writings that appeared to outline thoughts about violence and political action before the attack occurred. Investigators also reviewed whether he searched for information related to presidential security, hotel layouts, or law enforcement procedures. Officials attempted to determine whether online activity showed a gradual pattern of radicalization or a sudden shift in behavior during the months before the incident. As the investigation continued, authorities worked to identify whether Allen acted alone or communicated with outside groups. Federal officials publicly stated they had not found evidence linking him to a larger organized operation, but investigators continued examining digital contacts and online interactions. Agents reportedly interviewed people who knew him personally, including former classmates, co-workers, and acquaintances. Authorities wanted to know whether anyone observed concerning behavior before the attack or heard discussions about violence or political extremism. Investigators also studied his recent activities in California to determine whether changes in his daily life may have pointed toward preparation for the incident. Each new detail added another layer to the growing federal case against him. The planning stage of the Cole Allen case became one of the most heavily analyzed parts of the entire investigation because prosecutors believed it showed intent rather than impulse. By reviewing travel patterns, hotel bookings, weapon possession, online communications, and alleged written statements, authorities attempted to create a complete picture of how the attack developed before the night of April 25, 2026. The investigation raised broader questions about how individuals prepare for acts of political violence without drawing immediate attention from people around them. It also highlighted the difficulty law enforcement agencies face when trying to identify warning signs before a planned attack moves from private thoughts into public action. On the evening of April 25, 2026, the Washington Hilton Hotel in Washington, D.C. was operating under some of the highest security conditions used for a public political event in the United States. The White House Correspondents Dinner had already brought together journalists, government officials, business leaders, celebrities, and members of the president's administration. President Donald Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance were both expected to attend, which meant Secret Service agents were positioned throughout the hotel. Security checkpoints controlled access to hallways, elevators, and entrances near the ballroom. Outside the building, media crews continued filming arriving guests while police vehicles and federal security teams monitored the surrounding streets. Inside the ballroom, the dinner program followed its planned schedule. Guests sat at banquet tables while reporters and photographers moved throughout the event area. Staff members handled food service and event coordination as speakers prepared for scheduled appearances. The atmosphere appeared controlled and organized from the public view. At the same time, federal agents maintained surveillance around restricted sections of the hotel. According to investigators, security personnel were closely monitoring entrances connected to areas where the president and senior officials would move during the evening. The operation involved coordination between the Secret Service, local law enforcement officers, hotel security teams, and additional federal agencies assigned to protect the event. According to prosecutors, Cole Allen was already inside the hotel before the shooting began. Investigators later claimed he had arrived carrying weapons, ammunition, and tactical equipment. Authorities reviewed surveillance footage to track his movements throughout the property during the hours leading up to the attack. Prosecutors stated that Allen allegedly moved through hotel areas while avoiding attention from guests and staff members. Federal investigators later focused heavily on the timeline showing how close he allegedly came to secured areas before the situation escalated. Officials also examined whether he had studied the hotel layout ahead of time in order to understand the movement of security personnel during the dinner. Reports stated that the attack began near a Secret Service checkpoint outside the ballroom area. According to prosecutors, Allen allegedly approached the restricted section while armed with a shotgun. Agents assigned to security positions were stationed nearby while guests continued attending the event only a short distance away. Federal authorities later claimed Allen crossed into a protected area before firing at least one shot. One Secret Service agent was reportedly struck in the chest during the incident. Officials later confirmed that the agent survived because of ballistic body armor worn during the assignment. Investigators stated that the shooting immediately triggered emergency security procedures throughout the hotel. Within seconds of the gunfire, Secret Service agents and law enforcement officers reportedly responded to contain the threat. Prosecutors stated that agents moved quickly to stop Allen before he could advance deeper into the building. Security personnel secured hallways, restricted guest movement, and focused on protecting the ballroom area where political leaders remained inside. According to reports, officers surrounded and subdued Allen near the checkpoint area shortly after the shooting occurred. Federal investigators later examined body camera footage, radio communications, surveillance recordings, and witness statements to reconstruct the exact sequence of events during those critical moments. Authorities emphasized the speed of the response because of the potential danger posed to officials attending the dinner. As the scene unfolded, emergency responders entered the hotel while investigators began securing evidence connected to the attack. Parts of the building were placed under lockdown while federal agents directed guests and hotel staff away from restricted sections. Medical teams treated the injured Secret Service agent as additional officers searched surrounding areas for possible threats. News organizations quickly interrupted regular programming to report the developing situation at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. Television stations across the country began live coverage outside the Washington Hilton as details slowly emerged about the attempted security breach involving an armed suspect inside one of the nation's most protected political events. In the hours after the attack, investigators from multiple federal agencies began reviewing every part of the incident. Authorities analyzed security procedures, response times, surveillance footage, and evidence recovered at the scene. Prosecutors later argued that the rapid actions of Secret Service agents prevented the situation from becoming far more dangerous. The incident immediately became one of the most serious security investigations involving a presidential event in recent American history. Questions quickly spread across media platforms regarding how the suspect allegedly approached a heavily secured area while armed and whether earlier warning signs could have been identified before the night of the attack. Seconds after the gunfire erupted near the security checkpoint at the Washington Hilton Hotel, Secret Service agents and law enforcement officers moved quickly to take control of the situation. According to federal investigators, the immediate priority was stopping the armed suspect before he could move closer to restricted areas connected to the White House Correspondents' Dinner. The ballroom remained filled with political leaders, journalists, celebrities, and invited guests while security teams worked through emergency response procedures. Officers stationed near the checkpoint reportedly reacted within moments of the shooting, surrounding the suspect and securing nearby hallways to prevent additional movement inside the hotel. Federal prosecutors later identified the suspect as Cole Allen, a 31-year-old man from California. Authorities stated that Allen was subdued near the checkpoint area shortly after the shooting occurred. Investigators claimed Secret Service agents prevented him from advancing deeper into the protected sections of the hotel where President Donald Trump and senior officials were present. Officers reportedly recovered weapons and tactical equipment at the scene during the arrest process. According to reports, agents secured a shotgun, a pistol, ammunition, and other items investigators later examined as evidence. The arrest quickly became one of the most heavily discussed parts of the case because of the speed of the federal response and the location of the attack. Once Allen was taken into custody, law enforcement officers immediately expanded security operations throughout the hotel. Emergency procedures were activated while officers searched surrounding areas to confirm no additional threats existed. Hotel guests and event staff were directed away from restricted sections as agents coordinated with local police and federal investigators. Authorities also established secured evidence zones near the checkpoint where the shooting took place. Investigators began collecting shell casings, surveillance footage, witness statements, and communication records connected to the incident. Officials later stated that preserving the scene became critical because of the seriousness of the charges expected in the case. As news of the arrest spread across the country, media organizations quickly shifted into non-stop coverage. Television networks interrupted regular programming to report that an armed suspect had been arrested during the White House Correspondents' Dinner. Reporters gathered outside the Washington Hilton while helicopters filmed live images from above the hotel. Information during the early hours remained limited because federal agencies were still confirming details about the attack and the suspect's identity. Social media platforms also filled with speculation, witness accounts, and discussions about how the security breach happened during one of the most protected political events in America. Federal authorities later worked to separate verified facts from rumors spreading online after the incident. Investigators soon transferred Allen into federal custody as multiple agencies joined the case. The Federal Bureau of Investigation became heavily involved in examining the suspect's background, travel history, digital communications, and alleged planning activity before the attack. Authorities reportedly searched electronic devices, hotel records, and online accounts connected to him while prosecutors prepared formal criminal charges. Officials also reviewed surveillance footage showing the moments leading up to the shooting and the arrest itself. Investigators wanted to determine exactly how Allen allegedly moved through the hotel before reaching the checkpoint area and whether any earlier actions could have alerted security personnel before the incident escalated. Within days of the arrest, federal prosecutors announced serious charges connected to the attack. According to court filings, Allen faced allegations including attempted assassination of the President of the United States, assault on a federal officer with a deadly weapon, transporting firearms across state lines for criminal purposes, and discharging a firearm during a violent crime. The charges immediately placed the case among the most serious federal investigations in the country. Prosecutors argued that the suspect's alleged planning, travel, weapons possession, and actions during the attack showed deliberate intent. Defense attorneys later prepared to challenge parts of the government's claims as the case moved into federal court proceedings. The arrest of Cole Allen marked the beginning of a much larger federal investigation that continued long after the shooting ended. Authorities spent weeks analyzing evidence connected to the case while the public closely followed each new development. Questions surrounding security failures, political violence, online activity, and warning signs became major topics in national discussions. Investigators continued reviewing how the attack unfolded and whether additional information about the suspect's planning remained undiscovered. Although the arrest ended the immediate threat inside the Washington Hilton, the federal investigation that followed revealed how one violent incident could rapidly become a nationwide criminal case involving politics, security, technology, and public safety. After the arrest at the Washington Hilton Hotel, federal agencies immediately began a large-scale investigation into every part of the attack. The case quickly involved the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the Secret Service, local law enforcement officers, digital forensic teams, and federal prosecutors. Investigators wanted to understand how Cole Allen allegedly planned the incident, how he traveled across the country while carrying weapons, and whether anyone else had knowledge of his actions before the attack happened. Officials also focused on reconstructing the complete timeline leading up to the shooting at the White House Correspondents Dinner. Every movement, communication, purchase, and online activity connected to the suspect became part of the growing federal investigation. One of the first steps investigators took was securing physical evidence recovered from the scene. According to reports, agents collected firearms, ammunition, shell casings, tactical gear, clothing, electronic devices, and hotel surveillance footage. Authorities examined the recovered shotgun and pistol to determine their origin, purchase history, and transportation records. Investigators also reviewed fingerprints, DNA evidence, and ballistic testing connected to the weapons allegedly used during the incident. Surveillance footage from inside the hotel became especially important because it allowed investigators to track Allen's movement before the shooting occurred. Officials analyzed how long he remained inside the building, which areas he entered, and how he allegedly approached the Secret Service checkpoint near the ballroom. Digital evidence soon became one of the central parts of the case. Federal forensic teams searched through computers, mobile phones, emails, internet search history, cloud storage accounts, and online communications connected to Allen. Prosecutors later claimed investigators discovered writings discussing political frustration, anger toward government officials, and thoughts related to violence. Authorities reportedly reviewed documents, drafts, deleted files, and encrypted messages to understand whether the attack had been planned for weeks or even months before the dinner. Investigators also searched for evidence showing whether Allen researched hotel security systems, presidential movement procedures, or tactical methods connected to gaining access to restricted areas during large public events. Investigators then shifted attention toward Allen's personal life and background. Agents interviewed former coworkers, classmates, neighbors, friends, and family members to learn more about changes in his behavior before the attack. Officials examined his educational history, employment records, financial transactions, and travel activity leading up to April 25, 2026. Reports stated that authorities searched for warning signs that might have appeared earlier but were never reported to law enforcement. Investigators also reviewed whether Allen had spoken openly about political violence, weapons, or extreme ideas in conversations before traveling to Washington, D.C. These interviews became important because prosecutors wanted to establish whether his alleged planning was secretive or visible to people around him. Federal agencies also worked to determine whether Allen acted entirely alone. According to public statements from investigators, no organized group was immediately linked to the attack, but authorities continued reviewing online interactions and communication records connected to the suspect. Investigators studied social media activity, private messaging accounts, online forums, and digital communities he may have visited before the incident. Authorities wanted to know whether outside individuals encouraged his actions or shared violent political ideas with him. At the same time, federal officials attempted to identify whether the attack reflected broader concerns involving online radicalization, political extremism, or isolated personal behavior. This part of the investigation remained active for weeks as analysts reviewed thousands of digital records and electronic files. As evidence continued to grow, prosecutors prepared the legal case against Allen in federal court. Authorities formally charged him with attempted assassination of the President of the United States, assault on a federal officer, transporting firearms across state lines for criminal purposes, and discharging a firearm during a violent crime. Investigators organized witness testimony, forensic evidence, surveillance footage, and digital records to support the charges. Federal officials also reviewed radio communications and emergency response timelines from the night of the attack to document how security teams reacted during the incident. Prosecutors argued that the combination of travel preparation, weapon possession, hotel reservations, and digital evidence pointed toward deliberate planning rather than a spontaneous act. The investigation into the Cole Allen case became one of the most closely watched federal inquiries of 2026 because it combined politics, security, technology, and public safety concerns into a single criminal case. Authorities continued examining how a suspect allegedly carrying weapons approached a heavily protected presidential event without being stopped earlier. The case also raised larger questions about online influence, hidden warning signs, and the difficulty of detecting planned acts of political violence before they happen. Even after the arrest, investigators continued collecting evidence and interviewing witnesses as they worked to fully understand how the attack developed from private preparation into a national security incident that captured worldwide attention. After the shooting at the Washington Hilton Hotel and the arrest of Cole Allen, the case quickly moved into the federal court system. Prosecutors treated the investigation as one of the most serious criminal matters connected to presidential security in recent American history. Within days of the attack, Allen appeared before a federal judge for his first court hearing in Washington, D.C. Security around the courthouse remained extremely tight because of the national attention surrounding the case. Reporters gathered outside the building while federal officers controlled entrances and monitored movement throughout the courthouse. News organizations across the country closely followed every update as the legal process officially began. During the first hearings, prosecutors presented the basic allegations against Allen and outlined the charges filed by the federal government. According to court documents, he faced accusations including attempted assassination of the President of the United States, assault on a federal officer with a deadly weapon, transporting firearms across state lines for criminal purposes, and discharging a firearm during a violent crime. Federal prosecutors argued that the evidence collected after the attack showed deliberate preparation before the White House Correspondents Dinner. They pointed to hotel reservations, weapons possession, travel records, surveillance footage, and digital communications as part of the case they planned to present during future court proceedings. Defense attorneys also began presenting arguments as the legal battle developed. Lawyers representing Allen focused on issues connected to detention conditions, evidence collection, and the suspect's mental state before the incident. Reports stated that defense attorneys questioned how Allen was being treated while held in federal custody. Some filings argued that certain jail conditions were too restrictive before trial. The court later reviewed issues involving suicide watch procedures, access to legal materials, communication rights, and medical evaluations connected to the defendant. These discussions added another layer to the courtroom process because the case expanded beyond the attack itself and into questions about how high-profile federal defendants are managed before trial. As hearings continued, prosecutors organized large amounts of evidence collected during the investigation. Federal agents prepared surveillance footage from the Washington Hilton, witness testimony from Secret Service personnel, forensic analysis of weapons recovered at the scene, and digital records connected to Allen's alleged planning activity. Prosecutors also worked with forensic experts examining electronic devices, internet searches, emails, and written documents connected to the suspect. Investigators reportedly believed these records showed planning before the attack occurred. Court proceedings later focused on how much evidence defense attorneys would be allowed to review and whether some materials contained sensitive national security information connected to presidential protection procedures. The courtroom proceedings also drew attention because of the political importance of the case. The alleged attack occurred during an event attended by the president, senior government officials, journalists, and public figures. Because of this, federal prosecutors treated the matter as both a criminal case and a national security concern. Security around court appearances remained high while reporters filled the courtroom during hearings. Media organizations closely analyzed every legal filing, judicial decision, and public statement released by prosecutors or defense attorneys. The case quickly became one of the most discussed federal prosecutions of 2026 because it involved presidential security, political violence, and questions about how someone with a quiet public background allegedly carried out such an attack. Another major issue raised during courtroom discussions involved mental health evaluations. Reports stated that federal authorities reviewed Allen's psychological condition while preparing the case. Defense attorneys reportedly explored whether mental competency evaluations would become part of the legal strategy moving forward. Prosecutors, however, continued focusing on evidence they claimed showed advanced preparation and deliberate planning before the shooting. These courtroom discussions became important because they could influence future legal arguments about criminal responsibility, trial readiness, and sentencing if a conviction were eventually reached. Judges overseeing the case carefully reviewed both prosecution evidence and defense requests as the legal process moved forward step by step. The courtroom phase of the Cole Allen case transformed the investigation into a long and highly watched federal legal battle. What began as a violent incident at a protected political event soon became a national courtroom story involving security failures, digital evidence, mental health questions, and presidential protection laws. Prosecutors continued building their argument while defense attorneys challenged aspects of the government's case. At the same time, the public followed every hearing in search of answers about motive, planning, and how the attack unfolded. Even before a trial officially began, the courtroom proceedings revealed how complex the case had become and how many unanswered questions still remain surrounding the events of April 25, 2026. And that's where today's case ends, but the questions remain unanswered. What do you think really happened? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this investigation, make sure you subscribe to True Crime Dead Signal and turn on notifications so you never miss another case. Until next time, stay aware, stay curious, and remember, every signal tells a story.